We are 6 days away from early voting, starting for the special primary in Prince George's County. Now, at the top of the ballot is the race for county executive. So the county executive's job is comparable to that of a mayor, responsible for the day-to-day operations of the county. 11 people want the job, once held by Angela Alsobrooks, who is now in the U.S. Senate. So we've invited all the candidates to join us live in studio to talk about the issues impacting residents in the county. Today, we are joined by Democratic candidate Marcellus Cruz. He's a small business owner with a background in cybersecurity, technology, and online data processing. Mr. Cruz, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, tell me why you want this job.
Why? That's a very good question.
Yeah.
First of all, it's time for a fresh start. I believe that the county right now has the right ingredients to grow. And so someone with my background, I've been in over 6,000 homes. My company is in, from healthcare to construction businesses. I'm in embassies, I'm a state vendor, I'm also in schools. So I'm in all these different sectors, and I've learned quite a bit of what we need to do.
I wanted to talk about Prince George's County because they are specifically facing a budget crisis of $170 million, the deficit roughly. That's if they do nothing, if they make no cuts. We know there will be cuts made to kind of reduce some of the government funding for certain programs. How would you propose balancing the budget?
Well, first of all, we have to balance the budget. We already know that 62% of it is going to go to education. And then there are all of the security things that we must fund. And then there's some discretionary spending. But my point here is we're going to have to grow our way out of this. We have not been growing. We're going to have to increase our commercial tax base. And so that's what I come out of. Last year, we had over 150,000 jobs not filled. My company alone in Prince George's County, I had 10 jobs that were not filled. It is time that we focus on workforce and economic development.
Okay, what would you propose cuts to?
Cuts.
Yes.
Like I said, we will fund education. I think usually we try to make cuts to education. No, we need to fund education.
Well, I think to your point, 62% of that budget going to education, but if you have a $170 million deficit, if we're starting there, it's very difficult, you're not proposing any cuts. There's nothing that you want to invest is what you're saying.
I want to invest. We have to invest. We're going to have to grow.
But balancing a budget deficit of $170 million and then making investments while avoiding cuts is tough.
It is very tough.
So would you raise property taxes? Where would you generate the revenue from?
Like I said, our commercial-based taxes right now has shrunk. Prince George's County has the largest register of small businesses of any county.
Sure.
And right now, we're not putting them into this fight. It is time to bring us. I come out of that sector. I want to grow, and I will pay more taxes.
Well, to that point, so 2024, you're correct. Prince George's, it was reported, has the most new businesses of any Maryland county. 2022, the census data said there were 22,000, roughly 400 businesses in PG County. And you're saying we need to generate some of that tax deficit from them.
Correct.
How do you attract them?
How do I attract them?
How do you bring more businesses into PG County?
Well, first of all, I am in the rooms with a lot of the businesses that want to come to Prince George's County. And then we have a lot of businesses in Prince George's County that we're not bringing to the fight. We're not giving them contracts. We're not building in a way that we can have movement towards their business. The way we developed, a lot of things have to change so that we can expand. We're going to be developing this coming year, so let's develop correctly. Let's have a better movement between condos and storefronts on the bottom. Are you following what I'm
Well,
doing?
so I think if I hear you correctly, you're asking for more of a mix, more urban living?
Urban living versus the suburban living.
Okay, how then do you propose, where would you propose more urban development happening in the county specifically? Anything come to mind?
Southern County.
Okay.
Southern County, we need to invest in and revitalize a lot of those communities. And I think it's ripe right now for us to do that. We need to bring in better restaurants. We need to bring in better businesses. Right now, we are being taken. I think we need good leadership to bring in the right mix and to develop. Again, I want to focus on that. When I look at the Nat Stadium and I look at that ecosystem that's around it,
Sure.
we have not been doing that. When you look at the Commanders Stadium.
Right, I was going there.
Right.
That's exactly where I was going.
Well, all right. Well, then let's go there. We have not built the way we should. It is estimated that businesses will go up 30%. They'll get better, income 30% when you have foot traffic like that.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to take you back to the Commanders because look, they have got one foot solidly out the door toward the district. What would be your pitch to either keep them, or if they go to DC, what's your pitch to kind of make up the gap, this massive gap? The Commanders are one of your biggest constituents, and they're about to take a hike. They're heading to DC.
I believe the Commanders want to stay.
Okay, what's your pitch to them to stay? Why would they stay?
Well, first of all, we did not follow through on what we should have done, and that was to build an ecosystem around the stadium. That stadium is sitting there, and yes, we built in Woodmore and a couple other adjacent places, but again, I'm back at, people want to be able to walk and go to the coffee shop and go to the flower or go to the grocery store. We're driving too many places. So my point is to build around the stadium and propose a new location.
Okay. Let's talk about Prince George's County. It has one of the highest property tax rates in Maryland, yet county residents complain about things like snow removal, trash removal. Correct. In January, we saw, a disastrous result with snow removal where, a week went by and residents didn't have the snow removed. How would you fix that?
Well, first of all, it's time, like I said at the top of this, for bold and new leadership. Someone who's an executive.
Okay.
As an executive, I've had to make tough calls and then put good people in positions, and we plan for the future. I believe that was a lack of planning. I mean, we had, 9 months to plan? And then come up with what we're missing. No, we didn't have plows on the road. They said that we didn't have some kind of solution. No, it was plows on the road. And I think that we have to get back to the basics of what makes a county grow. That's why I'm focusing on business.
To that exact point, what would be a basic, if we're going back to basics, when it comes to snow removal, when it comes to things that are this important, what would you have tweaked to make this function?
I would have made sure our contracts with, the different entities that plow our roads were ready to go.
Okay.
I didn't see one plow on the road. Right. To be honest with you.
It was brutal.
It was brutal. I was out there shoveling and helping my neighbors.
Right. Let's talk about public education. We kind of tap dance on it just a moment ago, but as I touched on, 62% of the budget is going to education.
That's right.
I've heard you saying in my research that school was tough when you were younger, and you talk about a teacher who changed your life. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yes. Up until 4th grade, I was an awkward kid. I didn't know how to make friends. And my grades were poor, D and F. But my mom went to my 4th grade teacher, one of the toughest teachers in the school, and that teacher made me learn Martin Luther King speeches. And she put me into plays, and she showed me how to make friends. And that same year, I became an A student. So I learned right then and there, mental health was a part of that. A teacher who cared, parents who cared. It takes an ecosystem to get a young person through.
Let me walk you through some of these numbers. Prince George's County Public Schools reported a graduation rate of 77%, which is below the Maryland state average.
Yes.
Bottom 50% statewide. Overall district rank, bottom 50% statewide. Reading proficiency, 35%. Math proficiency, 11%. How do you turn those numbers around?
Listen, my company and nonprofits that I'm working with, we are turning numbers around, and this is what we need to do. The numbers are in. It's clear. When you put a second pathway in our education system, you enhance it with a second pathway of entrepreneurship, certifications, and apprenticeships, graduation rates go up. We have seen through build.org this, where we've gone from the 76% all the way to 96%. We can get a 25% jump if we do things like that and start at the 6th grade. We're waiting way too late into high school. No, kids need to be engaged. And once you engage a kid, you allow them to get the apprenticeships and you allow them to start certifications, their grades change.
Okay, so that's part of the way that you would attack the education, kind of approach it, excuse me, because the other thing I wanted to talk about is the juvenile crime.
Yes.
So we're seeing the adult crime decrease to
Yes.
some extent in PG County, which is positive, but juvenile crime, carjackings, car thefts, those numbers are going up.
Yes.
And you think this is maybe in tandem with the education
Of
system?
course.
So I need something tangible to
Okay.
hold on here.
Okay.
What are you going to do differently?
Well, really quickly, 75% of all inmates dropped out of school.
Okay.
That's a fact. Last year, we had over 9% of our young people to drop out of school. That's over 10,000 kids. Okay, so then we wonder why there's a spike in crime. The year before that was 8.5%. So what we're seeing is if you can engage the kids, I've seen young people who were headed in the wrong direction, and once we put entrepreneurship and certifications and apprenticeships in, they change, and they're the top of their class now.
Will that help with recidivism rates that we're seeing? Because, right, we then see the reoffenses.
Right. So we have to carry a stick, and there has to be consequences when you commit a crime. But we also have to have that carrot where I say that we have to force a lot of our young people who want a second chance into apprenticeships and getting a certification, because that's how we steer them from this lawlessness of feeling helpless.
Okay, this is a delicate dance here, and I do want to dig into this just slightly here with you, because some argue for what you're talking about, which is the increased investment in community programs to help with this issue, juvenile crime, education, things like that. Others want a tougher stance on crime. How do you balance this to make a meaningful difference?
You can have a tough stance on crime. Like I said, we have to carry that stick. There has to be consequences.
What would that look like?
Let's say you were sentenced to 2 years, right? In that 2-year time is where I say the carrot is. In that 2-year time, you have to get a certification.
Okay.
You can't just sit there. You got to get that certification. And companies, I want to bring small businesses to education like we do for sports, but scholastically. And companies are following and watching the talent, because we need certified workers.
What about the curfew at the National Harbor? How do you feel about that in regards to the juvenile crime? Do you feel like it's effective? Do you feel like it's not? Do you have an opinion on that? I'm just curious.
My opinion is it's when it's warranted, let's do it, but it's time to change our culture. That's my opinion. I have been changing our culture in the private sector. Now I want to do it in the public sector, and I want to do it in a big way. I think once we change that culture, we won't need to have a curfew, because our young people will be doing and excited about the future.
Let's talk about public safety, because of course that requires people, it requires manpower. Prince George's County Police is reporting that they are still trying to fill 300 vacant positions. What would your plan be to help with recruitment?
Well, that's the thing. Anybody who's been following me, I'm always talking about pipelining. It is time that we connect the dots between our education, small business, nonprofit, and our, first responders. We have to do a better job in our education system, and we have to do a better job with recruitment as well as pay. And the only way you do all of that is if you grow your economy. So we're back to growing the economy. If we want better services for our senior citizens, for our disability, we want ADA requirements everywhere. We're going to have to grow the economy.
I got to ask you, we're getting a little tight on time
Okay.
here, but without a political background, right? You're not an ingrained politician, so to speak. How are you going to be ready to manage on day one, manage the government?
Yes.
What would you say to the viewers watching? What's your pitch for, hey, I'm ready to hit the ground running?
You're looking for someone with passion, someone who's going to fight for you, and someone with a vision and a plan. This is an executive role. This is not legislative. And that's the problem. We've been hiring people out of the legislative or from this office. No, this requires an executive with a vision. So I could hit the ground running. I have people around me who are currently in government in Prince George's County.
As an executive, business executive, as we close out on time here, if I handed you a business that was $170 million in the hole, what would you do? I mean, would your reaction be, I can handle this? Or,
Oh yeah. Hand me the hot potato. I'm ready to go because this is what I do.
Okay. All right, Mr. Cruz, thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with us.
Thank you.
All right. And just a reminder about some important dates. Early voting for the special primary begins February 26th. It will end on March 3rd, and Election Day for the primary is the next day on March 4th. And tomorrow at 4:30, we'll be joined by Democratic candidate Calvin Hawkins, who currently sits on the Prince George's County Council. Back after the break.